the one in Vermilion going. How do you think the Grizz are going to fare against South Dakota?
I think the Grizz are going to go in and beat South Dakota. I think that it obviously could go either way, but I think that, South Dakota is picked, 7th in their conference?
Yep, 7th in the 10-team Missouri Valley, yep.
And I talked about this when I was on the show a couple weeks after the Cat Grizz game last year. Everybody's talking about how tough the Grizz schedule is, and that's true. It definitely is. But the Grizz also lost next to no one.
Totally.
So where they were at the end of last year is, in my mind, their low water mark. Mm-hmm. And did they grow any? I just think that team last year would have beat South Dakota. I think this team this year beat South Dakota.
I agree, and I think if they could beat South Dakota, I think it's going to set them up for a pretty nice little non-conference run, but we'll get a little bit more into that. The first weekend of September, go ahead.
I will also say that I think it's good for the Big Sky Conference if the Grizz can beat South Dakota, because the Big Sky as a whole needs to start winning more of those matchups with the Missouri Valley.
No doubt. It'd be interesting to see, too, because South Dakota gave Weber State a run last year. It was a good game, and Weber State ended up outlasting them. I think they won 23-14 in typical Jay Hill fashion, winning by a touchdown with less than 20 points on the board. But September 7th, got North Alabama coming to Montana to Missoula for a night game, Washington Grizzly Stadium. And then Southeast Missouri, SEMO, is in Bozeman for the Gold Rush. So you got 2 games, 2 night games, 2 home openers for the Bobcats and the Grizzlies. Let's start with the Cats. SEMO, a playoff team from a year ago, the second best team out of the Ohio Valley, behind Jacksonville State, and a team that I watched play against Weber State in the playoffs. I thought they were hard-nosed and tough. I thought they looked pretty darn good. They had a couple really good players, including a linebacker who was the Buck Buchanan Award winner, and he is back. So that's a good matchup. It's going to be 2 top 25 teams in Bozeman playing at the Gold Rush.
I think that if the Cats are who they say and we kind of think they are, I think they win that game. I think home, the Gold Rush is always an exciting game for them for the most part. I think there was one dud a couple years ago, but I think that the excitement of being home, especially after not opening the season great, is going to carry them to a win on that. I think they're going to. I think it'll be close. I think if the Cats were the road team, I might say differently. It's kind of like how the Cats beat Western Illinois at home last year, and the Grizz had to travel and lost to them. I think you reverse those and the outcome switches. So I think the Cats are going to get a win on that one. The Cats are a talented team. They've got a good defense. They're home where I think that when you're home, you can play your ball control a little bit more.
Yep.
You just kind of, it favors you. And those guys had to travel here. So I think it's Cat win. As for the Grizz, I think it's a Grizz win. I think North Alabama is probably better than some people might think they are.
And they're going to have athletes.
Yes, they're going to have athletes. And I think that, the casual Grizz fan is just going to think this is another directional whatever school they brought in, but I think they're better than that. I think that the Grizz first home game since, that meltdown at the goal line, I think there's just going to be a lot of momentum, and I think they're going to pull off that win.
I agree with both those sentiments. I think that one of the key factors for the Cats is I think the Cats are going to have a little bit of an element of surprise the first 2-3 games just because of some of the transfer additions they made to their defense. I think that could play a factor against Texas Tech because every coach can say we're not going to underestimate anybody, whatever. It's just human nature to maybe underestimate an FCS school from Montana. But I guarantee you the first couple series of the game against Texas Tech is going to be in for it a little bit.
They're going to be surprised by what the Cats
because when you
bring.
look at the Cats, when you talk about, call it the front five, they're running an odd man front, but call it the front five with the Buck end and Troy Anderson playing the Sam linebacker spot. First of all, you got no film on Troy Anderson. When you got Jason Scrimpos, who goes 6'6", 300 pounds from University of Washington to the inside, you got Derek Barks lining up at 3 tech now. You got bookend guys who used to be at the University of Washington and Amandre Williams and Bryce Stirk. We're talking about 3 former UW guys. None of them were starters there, but they were all playing behind guys like Vita Vea and Greg Jenkins and Elijah Qualls, who are all in the NFL now. I just think that no matter how much you say you're not going to underestimate, you just do not think a team like Montana State is going to have these 5 guys lining up. And Texas Tech, I'm sure, will adjust to that. But I just think that Montana State's going to have a chance to really overwhelm people with their front 5 early. Once there's film, people then won't underestimate them, and I think that it'll be a little bit of an adjustment. But I think that's going to be a key factor. I also think that Montana, they have a chance to maybe surprise some people too, just because of a couple guys that they have added to their offense. I really think that Mitch Roberts is going to be an X factor this year. I think his addition plus the proven commodities at receiver like Sammy Akem, Samari Torre, and Jerry Louis McGee. And then I also think if Gabe Sulcer has an elevated role. Now all of a sudden you got weapons everywhere if you're Montana.
There's just not enough passes to go around.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
we talk about all these guys, and it's like they're going to be weapons that are going to have to be okay, not getting the ball as much as they might think. But switching back to the Cats real quick, aren't you just as a fan of football excited to see Troy Anderson play linebacker full time?
Oh man,
I'm pumped. Like people who listened to the podcast last year know that, we pick on the Cats, but we are big Troy Anderson fans.
Well, how can you not be?
I'm really excited to see them actually let him focus on what I think is his natural best position.
Absolutely.
And just wreak havoc for 2 years.
There's so many different lines that coaches use, and there's so many different ways that coaches spout cliches and say different things. But I was watching Troy Anderson do pass rush drills the other day, and Jeff Choate said this forever. He said Troy Anderson is the most special player I've ever coached, not because of his physical gifts, but because he calls him a one-rep guy. He only needs one rep to be able to pick something up, and he only needs 4 or 5 to start to master it. And by the time he's got 10 or 20, which you can get in one practice, he's getting pretty darn good at something. It takes most guys 4, 6, 8 weeks to be able to get to the point where Troy Anderson, he's just so accelerated, and I think that's why he can play both sides of the ball. We talked about this kid on this show so much, and I know that everybody around Montana State has been trying to downplay it a little bit because, I mean, the legend around this kid has grown so huge that it's almost like Choate said the other day, he's like Paul Bunyan. People wonder what can this kid do? Can he do everything? And you have to remember, he's still a 20-year-old kid.
Exactly.
He's still just a human. But, I think that honestly, in some ways, it's an underplayed story. The fact is that the kid, realistically, say he had a couple big games right out the gates defensively, he has a chance to be on the Walter Payton and the Buck Buchanan Award watch list. He's already on the Walter Payton, and he's not even going to be a full-time offensive starter.
Just think if his career plays out how I kind of think it will the next 2 years, and he's getting a chance at the NFL and whatnot, the storyline of him giving up a year at his best position because the QB position was so terrible on his team.
Right.
I mean, that's going to be crazy.
And not just like kind of functionally doing it. No one can say he's an elite thrower of the football, but he was. He was a first-team All-Conference quarterback. He led up to the playoffs, and he was, in certain ways,
asterisks.
In certain ways, the most dangerous player in the league. I mean, I thought he had a legitimate case for offensive MVP just in terms of how important he is to his team.
Yeah, I would agree with that. He was first team All Big Sky as like an athlete, really, because there was a quarterback too.
Right.
But I'm not taking anything away from him because that's legitimate. He and I have something in common, and that's what he is to football. 1 rep and figure it out. I am to this radio show. 1 rep and we're nailing it.
Mike Nugent, he's on fire. Mike Nugent in studio with me, Colter Nuanez, Gus Tutel. He's somewhere on I-90 on his way to his fantasy football draft.
Get nervous, Gus.
He is probably already having himself a grand old time going on his way to his boys' weekend. All right, September 14th. This is a game that everybody knows the date of this game because we've been pumping this thing all summer. The Grizz are at Oregon. Remember, we've been giving away tickets every single week. We were at Paradise Falls last night. Mike was kind enough to come on by and check out the show with us and get himself recruited to sit in on a Friday. But we'll be giving away tickets for the next 4 weeks as well. Next week, we're at Locals downtown, right there on the corner of Broadway and Ryman. So come check us out. We're giving away pair tickets each of the next 4 weeks as well to send a bunch of Grizz fans out to the Montana at Oregon Ducks game. But then on the other side, Montana State has the unenviable trip to Macomb, Illinois to play at Western Illinois, a team they defeated last year. But as the Grizz learned, the logistics to get to Macomb in itself puts you about a touchdown behind by the time you even get there. Mm-hmm. So I think we both agree with the Grizz. I don't think that they stand much of a chance in Autzen. But the Cats...
Yeah, we don't even talk about it. That's a
right.
loss.
I mean, that's a loss. How do you see the Cats doing, though, in Macomb?
Again, it's like I hate to do this, but I think it's another loss. I think that if they had an experienced QB, it'd be a different story. But I just think it's tough to go win on the road in your first few starts. That being said, if they won it, I wouldn't be surprised, and it I think will reinforce what a lot of people in their fan base think their team is. So we'll see. I think it's a loss, though.
All right, marching on. Last game of He's even taking Nugent's requests.
I was gonna say we're going back to my high school years.
I love
here.
it. This was one of my great albums. I love this album. Green Day, rocking out. This is before they did that opera, whatever it was, American Idiot. I wasn't in any of that.
It's art, Coulter. What are you gonna criticize?
It is very artsy. I mean, I get the critical acclaim. It's just I like this. You know, give me 22.5-minute songs filled with angst. That's what I want. Mike Nugent in studio, filling in for Ryan Tuto, Coulter Nuanez, broadcasting to you live, 102.9 ESPN Missoula, statewide, SWX Montana, and around the planet Earth on YouTube television. Tutel's out for the day. He'll be back on Monday. Have no fear. At least I have. I have fear, but you guys shouldn't. Yeah, I believe he will come through. As always, we're broadcasting to you live from the Kurtz Polaris Studios. Kurtz Polaris, 2904 West Broadway, Missoula. Go check them out, kurtzpolaris.com. Mike and I were marching through our Alpine Touch Grizz and Bobcat segment, picking the games for both Montana State football. We made it through September, and we got the Bobcats at 3-2, coming off a win over Northern Arizona in their conference opener. We have the Grizz at 3-2, coming off a loss at UC Davis in their conference opener. October 5th, that's the Grizz are hosting Idaho State, and the Cats are at Cal Poly. How do you see those two?
I think there are wins on both programs. I mean, I think the Cats will walk over Cal Poly. I think maybe Cal Poly might get back to where they were, but I think right now the league's kind of caught up with them, and they just don't have the athletes to do what they're trying to do on that.
It's a big transition year for them too, because they have. That's the thing is they have had actually one of the best athletes to run their offense through. First with Chris Brown at quarterback, then with Joe Prothro at fullback. If they would have had those two guys together, they would have. You've been talking about like potential playoff contending team.
Yeah, it feels like those guys played for a decade, though.
Right, no doubt. And they put up the numbers to prove it, but it is a huge transition year for Cal Poly. And they're another team that they run so many twists and stunts up front that the Cats could just absolutely annihilate them with their run game. The Cats rushed for like 450 yards against them in Bozeman last year. And Jeff Choate has proven that Montana State's defense has been able to hold down the triple option. They've done well against Cal Poly, both matchups in the Choate era.
Yep, no concern about that.
And then on the Montana side of things, I mean, Idaho State, to me, if you're going to run the RPO offense that they run, Mike Farrader, former Grizz passing game coordinator, former Grizz receiver, he's the OC over at Idaho State, but you got to have a veteran quarterback, and they don't have anybody at quarterback to speak of. Gunnar Amos seems like he might be the front runner there to be the starter at Idaho State, but I just don't really know. It'll
be interesting. And I mean, they'll probably score some points, and it might be fun, but I just think at Washington Grizzly Stadium, I don't see it, especially Rob Fennessy, Mike Farrader. Houck's not going to lose to those guys.
There's no doubt that Bobby Houck is going to try his. I mean, it would be a upset of epic proportions if Idaho State was to win in Missoula. And Rob Fennessy might just ride off in the sunset. He might just call it a day if he beat Montana. It's so funny because so many coaches, they say, I don't want to talk about the past. I want to put my own stamp on the program. Fennessy has made no bones about saying, I learned all the best things I learned in my career at the University of Montana. We want Idaho State to be like Montana. He says it all the time.
Well, every school in Big Sky should want to be like what Montana was in that era, right?
No doubt.
I mean,
no doubt. October 12th, the Grizz have the easiest win on the schedule, BYE, and the Cats are playing Sacramento State. Now, I said that I thought that there was only one dark horse in the league, and that's NAU. I do think that Sac State is a team that history has proven that they have never risen up to fulfill the potential of the talent that they have on their roster. But now they have a guy who I think is really intriguing as their head coach. Troy Taylor was an absolutely epic record-setting head coach at the high school level in Folsom, California. He coached 2 straight National Player of the Year, first Dan O'Graves, then Jake Browning. I mean, Jake Browning threw 91 touchdowns his senior year of high school. I don't care what level you're playing at. That's just ridiculous. And Troy Taylor took the leap to get into the college game, joined Bo Baldwin's staff at Eastern Washington, and then he went to University of Utah as the OC, and now he's back in a place where he really knows the dynamic of the area and the recruiting scene, all that stuff. And so it'd be interesting because Sac State's always had athletes. I was wondering how fast he can put his stamp on it. I don't expect it to be this year, but I do think that Sac State has always had a lot of talent. So it's just kind of been a waiting game to see if they can ever find the right guy to put that talent in place.
You know who else doesn't think it'll be this year? The coach that needed a 10-year contract to put in his program.
No doubt.
I mean, they might get there, but that they got to prove it. Ironically, when the Grizz beat Sac State last year, Coach Houck said it was the best top-to-bottom program we'd played to that point.
Right.
And then they lost every game the rest of the
Well,
way.
they also lost almost every player.
Yeah.
The fact that Kevin Thompson, their quarterback, I think Kevin Thompson's actually top half of the league quarterback, maybe even borderline top 5 quarterback in the league. And losing him hurt them big time. Losing George Obina, their first team All-League D-end early on, hurt them big time. Losing Darren Choates, their interior defensive lineman, hurt them really bad. Manoa Pearson was banged up. Dre Terrell was banged up. All the guys of note besides Elijah Dotson basically were banged up last year. So we'll see, because they were a 7-win team 2 years ago, but that was against a soft schedule. But I do agree with you. I think that the Cats will beat Sac State. So then the following week, the Grizz are at Sac State. Same thing.
Same thing. I think the Grizz win that game.
And the Cats have their bye the next week, so the Cats are there. So then October 26th, this is going to be an epic showdown. I cannot wait for Bobby Hauck to get a crack at Eastern Washington. I know he wanted one last year. He didn't get it. Hauck actually... It's funny because Hauck lost 2 out of his first 3 to the Cats and then dominated the Cats after that. Just spanked them 4 years in a row. But Hauck was sort of back and forth with Eastern Washington during his first tenure here at Montana. So I think that's going to be a premier matchup. And then the Cats, they're out on the road at North Dakota.
I think the Cats are going to win North Dakota, first of all. I think we'll go with that. I think North Dakota doesn't have the athletes they've had in years past. You and I were talking about that. I think that's a Cat win. I think the Grizz are going to beat Eastern Washington at home. I think that, again, it kind of goes back to, it's Hauck year 2. He's got a bunch of his guys in the program now, and he's kind of trying to return things to the way they were. I think if that game's at Eastern, the Grizz lose by maybe 10 or more. But I think at home, I think they have a chance to pull that one off.
All right, so we got a couple red-hot Montana teams going into the month of November, both riding 4-game winning streaks, both at 6-2 overall, both at, I guess the Cats are at 4-0 in league play, and the Grizz at 3-1. Mike Nugent giving us his picks for the Bobcat and Grizzly football schedule. Grizz start out the month of November at Portland State. That's going to be a game just ripe with redemption because last year the Grizz just completely no-showed for the first 3 quarters and then kind of got into a slugfest with Portland State, and it looked like they were maybe going to gut it out, and they had a torrid comeback. And then a 50-plus yard field goal by a true freshman goes floating through the uprights. And I've never seen Bobby Hauck with a look of just shock on his face like he did when that happened. It was the most emotionless I've ever seen Coach Hauck. And it was a bizarre way for homecoming to play out in Missoula. And then the Cats, they got Southern Utah at home.
You know who wasn't emotionless in that stadium?
Every other person that was
Me.
in the stadium. Yeah.
When I sit in the north end zone and that field goal went our way, oh, Lord. I think the Grizz will go win at Portland State. I think the Grizz should be better. They were better than them last year. They're better than them this year. They should win that game. I think Cats have Southern Utah. I think that's a win for them as well. I think Southern Utah has a little bit of growing to do.
No doubt. And DeMario Warren has some proving to do because he won a Big Sky Championship in year 2 with the remaining of Ed Lamb's players, and they haven't been able to get back on track. There's a lot of talk around the Big Sky about Montana State not being able to figure out their quarterback situation. Since Ammon Olsen graduated, Southern Utah's quarterback situation has just been a disaster. They've brought in multiple transfers. None of them have lived up to the billing. Patrick Tyler was really good, even though he wasn't recruited to be the guy. He was recruited to be a backup, and then he emerged over all these other guys.
It's kind of like the guy at Northern Colorado a couple years ago was the receiver, and then
right.
Yeah, it happens.
It's harder than it looks to recruit quarterbacks at this level.
The wild card in that is the Southern Utah brought in Brandon Fisher, the coordinator, right?
Yeah, that's interesting.
So he's got some Cat hate. So maybe that's a thing.
There's a lot of moving pieces in the Big Sky. I think that's another sort of undertold factor. I mean, you talk about Andy Thompson leaving his post at NAU, which he's held for 10-plus years. Now he's at Sac State. What sort of stamp does he put on the Sac State defense? You talk about Aaron Pflugrad being retained at Northern Arizona as the offensive coordinator. He has a chance to really take the next step with Case Cookus in the fold. You talk about Brandon Fisher, a guy who has NFL experience, who anybody that was around him at the University of Montana knows that he was smart as a whip, and so we'll see what sort of stamp he can put on the Southern Utah defense. It's always interesting when there's all these moving parts. But so you have the Grizz winning at Portland State as well?
I do.
Okay. So here we go. We got 7-win teams going into the stretch run here. The Grizz host Idaho in the battle for the Little Brown Stein, and the Cats are in the smelliest town in America at Northern Colorado.
Cats are going to win at Northern Colorado. The cushiest job in all of college athletics is the head coach at Northern Colorado, I believe, because that guy who sounds like a nice man. Clearly, performance isn't an expectation.
Well, I mean, the fact that he had 2 winning seasons in Northern Colorado, I think you could actually say that he's the greatest coach in Northern Colorado history.
Well, at this level, don't mock Joe Glenn.
Joe Glenn is the greatest coach in Northern Colorado history. There's no doubt. But at the Division I level, Ernest Collins is the only guy that has had winning seasons. But it's interesting. After that last winning season, they gave him a 5-year extension, and they have been awful since then. But they don't have the money to buy him out, so it is the cushiest job. And he's going to make it to year 10 before he finally gets forced out. I think this is going to be year 7 or year 8. So I agree with that. How do you see the rivalry game with the Vandals playing out with Montana?
I think the Grizz beat Idaho. I was at Idaho for that game last year, and again, you just talk about where the Grizz were last year, who they lost, who they get back, where Idaho was, who they lost, who they get back. I just don't see how Idaho is going to grow up enough to come in and beat the Grizz this year.
Some people I've talked to around the league think Idaho could be okay. I think Idaho's terrible. I think Idaho's going to be awful. No Caden Ellis. I thought Caden Ellis was one of the 5 best players in the entire league, period, and he's proving that now with the New Orleans Saints. But I just think that
What are they using as a factor for that?
I don't know, because I just think that as long as Paul Petrino is just so dead set on starting his son at quarterback, he's just not good. I mean, he's not even close to a Division I quarterback.
He's 2 notches above me at quarterback, and they wouldn't even let me play little Grizzly quarterback.
I mean, they love their little ball control, sprint out, throw it 4 yards, control the clock. I mean, to put Idaho's game plan in perspective, Idaho controlled the ball for 44 minutes in Bozeman last year and lost.
Yeah. I just think that, and we talked about this a little bit last year, but I think that there's all these people who think that just because Idaho was FBS, they're going to come in and they were going to do well last year, and then somehow the guys that were on the roster who are younger are going to grow up and do well. No, I mean, they're not better than half the programs in the Big Sky. I think they'll get there.
Maybe.
But we'll see. I think they got some growing. So, no, I think that's a win for UM.
All right, so we got the Grizz now 8-2 and 5-1 going into the stretch run here, and we got the Cats at 8-2 and on a 6-game conference winning streak. That's the unbalanced schedule in a nutshell.
Yep.
All right.
It ends this week for the Cats.
And this is what's so intriguing to me. This is what's going to be so fun about covering this season. Is it's actually, because even though we can bemoan the unbalanced schedule as much as we want, this year both teams, their schedules finish with a crescendo. Montana hosts Weber State. The Cats go to UC Davis, and then they play each other in Bozeman. I mean, it's basically the playoffs start on November 12th if these two teams are in the positions that we expect them to be in.
100%. I think the Cats are going to lose at UC Davis, and it's not to pick on the Cats or anything like that. I just think UC Davis is a good team.
It's really good.
They've got a good offense. The Cats have had an easy schedule up to this point. It's on the road. Again, if it was at home, if it was in Bozeman, I think the Cats win. I think they're going to lose to UC Davis.
It's not just on the road. It's at a place that they have not been under this coaching staff. They haven't been to UC Davis in several years. Actually,
and it's another not easy to get to.
Right. The last time the Cats played at UC Davis might have been one of the wildest games I've ever covered. I remember being on the sidelines. It was the 2015 Cats that just scored 1 million points all over the place, but maybe it was the 2014. It was 2014. But I remember Dakota Prukop throwing his 5th touchdown of the game and coming over the sidelines, and Tim Cramsey, the offensive coordinator for Montana State at the time, yelling at Rob Ash and Jamie Marshall, the defensive coordinator, saying, "Can you guys get one stop so I can take Prukop out of the game? He doesn't need to be in the game. We got 60, but you guys can't stop giving up touchdowns." Well, it took 17 more points for Montana State to close that up. They won that game 77-37. All-time Big Sky Conference record for total offense in a game. I think they had 780-something yards of total offense in a game. Just ridiculous. But it'll be interesting to see how Jeff Choate and his staff react to going to Davis, second to last game of the season. And then the Grizz versus Weber State. This is going to be a slugfest because I think the matchups, Weber State they're talented and tough defensively. They have a really good secondary that can match up with the Grizz. And on the other side, they are so intent to just try to run the ball and milk the clock. But I think that the Grizz will rise to the occasion playing that style of offense. I think it just really comes down to can the Grizz offense score points against Weber's defense? That's been an almost impossible task for everybody in the league the last 2 years.
This is where I think the Bob Stitt wide receiver depth is going to come in handy. I think we've got a couple offensive coaches in Pease and
Rosenbaugh.
Rosenbaugh, who I can't believe I couldn't remember his name. See, not media. We got a couple guys who understand how to take advantage of their weapons, and I think that's a game where they have a great secondary, but do they have a great secondary that can cover 5 wide receivers?
Right.
Like if you go across the way and you've got Akem, Torre, some combination of Flowers, Roberts, Jerry Lou McGee, and Sulcer, some combination of those guys, plus Snead, who can run it out of the backfield, or you can do the sweeps and stuff like that. I think that's how they score points on Weber State at home. Again, if this was on the road, different story. But I think at home, I think the Grizz beat Weber State.
What you just said about the Grizz offense should be true across the board for pretty much every team that they play this year.
100%.
And that's why I think it just comes down to how well does their offensive line hold up? Can they protect Snead? Can they convert short yardage situations offensively? And how do their corners hold up? I think that if I was to argue anything with you on all your picks, I think I agree almost across the board for the Grizz schedule, except for I think they're going to lose to Eastern Washington just because I think that Eastern Washington has – I think that they can pick Montana apart because I still think Montana's not quite there on the perimeter defensively.
But what's interesting, and I can't disagree with that. I mean, I think that's a little bit of a toss-up game for me, and if it was at Eastern, like I said, I'd be picking a loss. What's interesting to me is we're entering year 3 of best, right?
Yep.
And, quarterback who was great, they just found another one, which they always seem to do, but it's going to be interesting to see if in year 3 that magic kind of carries over because this is, the fourth coach in this run, really. And, at some point as the Grizz learn, that starts to wear off a little bit.
No doubt.
So that's my thought there. And the other thing I think is if the Grizz O-line gets no better than last year, they still were kind of figuring out how to get the ball to those receivers, so hopefully they can keep that going. But, it brings us to the one important end-of-the-year game. That's all that we have left.
The most important. And you might have heard me say this on the show before, but we have a company policy, SkylineSportsMT.com, that I've carried over to ESPN Missoula. We did not pick the Cat Grizz game until 24 hours ahead of the Cat Grizz game, so I will leave that one open. But I do, when I put pencil to paper for my Big Sky poll, I almost across the board agree with everything you just said, except for I had the Grizz losing to Eastern Washington. But I have both these teams 8-3 going into the Cat Grizz game. I think that has them both squarely in the playoff picture, with the winner certainly going to the playoffs and the loser perhaps also going to the playoffs, depending on how everything else plays out. But I'm almost on the exact same page with you, and I guess I'll let you have the floor for how you think the Cat Grizz game is going to go.
Well, I do not work for Skyline Sports or ESPN Radio
yet,
so I'm going to pick the Cats.
Wow,
the Cat Grizz. And
wow.
The reason I'm going to do that is, there's probably only a few guys left on the Grizz roster who've beaten the Cats, right?
Yep.
They got to prove it. And it's like, we for the last couple of years, because they should have, sometimes you could argue they were better teams, maybe. I know that's going to upset some people, but they couldn't do it. So I think that until the Grizz can prove that they can beat the Cats, I'm picking the Cats. I think the Grizz are the underdog. Choate's got a 3-game winning streak. It is what it is. You can argue that it was against 3 of the 5 Grizz teams that haven't gone to the playoffs in our lifetime, yada, 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 but I think that is what it is, so I'm picking the Cats.
So if all that plays out, then that means you got the Grizz at 9-3 and 6-2 in league. You got the Cats at 9-3, 7-1 in league. I think that would mean that depending on if someone else could knock off Eastern Washington, the Cats might be co-Big Sky champs. But if not, then the Cats will be squarely alone in second. And then Weber State, if they were to lose another one, that would actually probably mean that they would be the 5th team behind UC Davis, who would be the outright champs. Montana State. Then Montana would be right there alone in 3rd, or I guess Eastern Washington and Montana and Montana State, depending on tiebreakers, because the Cats don't play Eastern. And then I think that in that situation, unless Weber was to take care of business against everybody else, I actually think that Weber would be on the outside looking in that situation.
Well, there's no way a 9-3 Grizz team with this schedule doesn't get the playoffs.
Absolutely,
There's
no, that's
not
what I'm saying.
chance.
The Grizz are in.
Yeah.
If they are 9-3, I think even at 8-4,
I think so too.
The
with
Grizz
this
are in.
schedule, and I think the one thing the Grizz got going for them is their toughest games are at home.
Yeah,
So
no doubt.
we'll see what happens.
329-1899. That was our Alpine Touch Montana Grizz segment with a little bit of Bobcats spiced in there. But if you give us a call right now, we got one of these for you. It's a little 4 big mountain flavors to go Alpine Touch pack. You can get these online right now, alpinetouch.com. But if you give us a call, 329-1899, the first caller will get one of these shipped right to your doorstep. And we also got an Alpine Touch hat for you as well. So give us a call right now, 329-1899. Alpine Touch is what you need all summer, all winter, any time of year. The best thing when you're out cooking up on the grill or doing any other sort of deliciousness in the kitchen. Give us a call right now, 329-1899. Alpine Touch, Montana Special Spice. Show marches on. More after this.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, ooh, pump it up, pump it up.
There's lots of fun to be had this summer. Get your wings at Town Pump with Red Bull Energy 12-ounce, 3 for only $7. Be refreshed and delighted anytime with any size fountain drink for just $1. Town Pump is right down the road. What are you waiting for?
Town Pump, right down the road. Pump it up, oh yeah.
Les Schwab is proud to introduce 2 of our best tires ever, just in time for summer. There's our exclusive Reputation, a high-mileage premium passenger tire we believe has the quietest, most comfortable ride ever. Or our exceptionally quiet and smooth all-season traction tire, the Open Range AT. Get up to $150 instant rebate on 4 backcountry MT or AT tires, or $50 on 4 road control passenger tires. Les Schwab Tires. Doing the right thing matters. Cannot be combined with other offers. Limited time. Terms and conditions apply. Details at leschwab.com.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
The Polaris Factory Authorized Clearance is here. The world's best-selling off-road lineup is priced to move with financing as low as 3.99% and rebates up to $3,500. Live life wide open in a high-performance RZR. Tackle anything from mountains to mud holes on a legendary Sportsman ATV. Get more done with a hard-working Ranger, or take on any task or trail in a versatile Polaris General. The best deals of the year are happening now. See Polaris.com or your Polaris dealer for rebates up to $3,500 and financing as low as 3.99% APR for 36 months during the Polaris Factory Authorized Clearance. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula and Highway 83 in Sealy. Kurtz Polaris is now showcasing all of the new 2020 Polaris off-road vehicles. To be the first to get a great deal on brand new state-of-the-art Polaris vehicles at Kurtz Polaris. Online at KurtzPolaris.com. Rebates valid in U.S. through 9/30/19 on new 2015 through 2019 vehicles. Financing offer valid on 2015s through 2020s. Subject to credit approval. Offers vary by model. See dealer for details. Always wear a helmet. Never drink and ride. Hey folks, Ryan Tutel here, and I'm with Josh of the Advocates Injury Attorneys. Josh, what are people left dealing with after an accident?
Well, quite a few things, actually. We see people that are in pain. They still need to get to work. They need to raise their kids, and now they have to take time to go see doctors and other healthcare providers. They're frustrated with working with the insurance companies and getting the runaround. We'll take on the burden of dealing with the insurance companies so you can get the best settlement possible and get back to your life.
Find your advocate online at montanaadvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers. You deserve an advocate.
Tutel and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
He is rocking it.
Reese is back there making Mike feel young again. I love it.
This is great.
Tutel Nuanez, minus the Tutel, plus the Mike Nugent. Broadcasting to you live, Kurtz Polaris Studios. As always, Kurtz Polaris, 2904 West Broadway, Missoula. Go check them out. They have all the things you need for your off-roading fun all summer, all fall, and all winter. Kurtz Polaris.
You know, Nugent, Nuanez, Nugent, it flows better. I mean, like, that's got some alliteration to it.
Oh, I hope that Gus is sitting in the back of a minivan with a bottle of bourbon in his hands, listening to Mike Nugent try to poach his job. This is gonna be an ongoing thing that's gonna be so fun. I love it.
I'm gonna throw the show out one of these days and do Nuanez and Nugent. We'll just see what happens.
Well, Nuanez and Nugent winding down the first hour. And I want to talk just briefly, because we don't have much time. We spent a lot of time in the first 2 segments talking about the Cats and the Grizz schedule, which is a fun conversation. And if this thing plays out, if games were played on paper and these papers are correct, think it'd be really fun for the state of Montana if both the Cats and the Grizz were in the playoff mix. It's been a little while. That was par for the course throughout basically when Mike Kramer was at Montana State and Joe Glenn, then Bobby Houck at Montana, then up through the Rob Ash days against the Bobby Houck and then Robin Pflugrad. I mean, there was many Cat Grizz games where it was for the Big Sky title or for a share of the Big Sky title for a playoff spot. It has been like that for a little while, and I think that would be great for the state of Montana if it got back to that. But quickly, Mike, everybody knows Mike probably from hearing his great ad that he runs on this show all the time, but you're over at Berkshire Hathaway. You're a real estate guy. You've been doing this for a long time. You got a lot of expertise in the area. So I think that real estate in specifically Missoula and Bozeman it's really fascinating because in Montana, we don't necessarily have the highest wages. In fact, we have some of the lowest wages in all of the United States. But a lot of times, the cost of living here is a lot lower, too, and people choose to live in Montana for the quality of life, not necessarily the incomes that you can make. But in Missoula and Bozeman, the real estate markets right now, they're both on fire. It's going really well for anybody that owns a home. It's really hard for anybody that doesn't own a home to break in. So how would you analyze just the state of real estate in the two college towns?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, Bozeman's just a whole nother world, and it really, when you're talking about real estate in Montana, there's three kind of segments, and one's Bozeman all by itself. Then there's kind of Missoula at the top of kind of what I would call the developed Montana real estate.
Sure.
You could throw in some of the other urban areas into that. And then there's kind of everything else that's just significantly cheaper. Prices just keep growing. They keep growing. What's interesting is in the Missoula market for the first two quarters, for the first half of the year, we were down in sales market wide. And you were kind of starting to think, well, maybe it's plateauing a little bit. But then June and July it just exploded, and all of a sudden in Missoula County we're on pace to have our highest sales volume count ever.
Wow.
And with that highest median sales price ever. What's interesting is median sales price year to date in Missoula County is $310,000. Gallatin County, $432,000.
I mean, I just don't even know how that's even possible.
And to give you perspective, I mean, Missoula County is the second highest median price in the state.
I mean, 310 is a really, really high number. You talk about 432. I mean, that's just like unattainable. I don't even know. So, do you feel like it's a stable market though right now?
I think it's stable. What's interesting, and I can speak more to Missoula than Bozeman, but this is probably true in all the markets we work in. I'm the managing broker of Berkshire Hathaway, and I help in management of a lot of our offices around the state. And one of the things that's kind of interesting is in most communities we're talking the Helenas and Bozeman's and places like that, the supply of housing, the new houses, we're not building enough new houses, be it condos or single-family houses or townhouses, to meet the ratio of owners to renters of the new population coming in. So even if we have a major economic event, like the stock market took a little bit of a dive this week.
Sure.
I think that our housing markets are going to stay stable. You might feel it a little bit, but I don't think you're going to feel a major drop off unless something catastrophic happens, like did with the housing bubble.
First-time home buyers is a huge. I mean, it's such an interesting group to be in. As somebody that I hope to be in sometime relatively soon. We'll see when these median prices are going. I don't know. It's a tall task. But what sort of advice would you give to a first-time home buyer?
Well, I think that don't just believe you can't do it. Go talk to people. Any lender worth their time is not going to feel bothered by you coming in and talk about what you can qualify for. And you're going to want to know what you can qualify for because you might see a house that's perfect for you. And in this market, you got to be ready to go. So if you're not qualified and you write an offer, you're going to lose. So I think don't be afraid to reach out. You can either reach out to a real estate agent or a lender to start with, but don't think you're wasting their time because we need new first-time home buyers to be buying into these markets. One of the other big things we really need, and it's a problem that if we could solve, we'd be in better shape across the state, is we need downsizing houses so that a lot of boomers whose kids have left their homes will sell their houses.
Right.
That would really help us a lot, but they have nowhere to go. Because if you're like in Missoula, you're looking to downsize out of your house that's maybe a 5-bedroom house, and you're going to pay more for a high-end condo somewhere else. It just doesn't make sense. So that's one of our big problems is we need to create some churn.
It's very interesting. It's going to be so interesting to see how it all evolves. But Mike is the go-to guy if you have any questions. And that's what his ad says every single day on this show. Any question is good to ask. Give them the phone number. People want to ask you questions. How do they get a hold of you?
It's 531-1802. Call or text.
Love it. Mike Nugent, Berkshire Hathaway. The show marches on. We're going to do a little bit of Bobcat quarterback stuff because, of course, we are. We also still have our sports update from the chick who doesn't know much about sports. And we're going to give you Mike's 5 top newcomers from the Grizz. Hour 2, Nuanez and Nugent marches on.
Welcome to today's lottery drawing. And today's winning numbers are not yours, not yours, and another number that's not yours. And the final number is not yours.
When it comes to having money, don't rely on luck. Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering it. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save. Feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
Alpine Touch has been providing you with the distinct seasonings you know and love for decades. Now, Alpine Touch has something to help you unleash the freshness of all the delicious flavors you need to spice up any meal. Check out Alpine Touch's new coarse grinds, unleashing the fresh taste of the garlic pepper or all-purpose seasonings to please any nose or taste bud. Coarse grinds can be purchased by the pound at retail locations around the state or at alpinetouch.com. Use the code ESPN10 at checkout to get 10% off any online order. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
At the Montana Club, our goal is to create a menu of mouth-watering food with variety to satisfy any craving. From the garden-fresh ingredients in our salads to our succulent, perfectly grilled Montana Club Angus steaks, we take pride in every detail that goes into preparing your food. Top off your meal with a premium cocktail, wine, or microbrew. Come as you are and satisfy your craving with our home-style breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Hey folks, Ryan Tutel here with Josh from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident and need help dealing with the insurance company, you should give The Advocates a call.
It doesn't cost anything at all to call, and I'd be happy to talk with you about your situation. You don't want to have to be dealing with contacting the insurance companies and setting up your claim. We can do that for you from start to finish. We'll take the hassle out of the process so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give Josh a call, 640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers, but you deserve an advocate. In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters. And you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
It happens. You're positive you put your bank card back in your wallet, but the next time you need it, it's missing. Avoid the panic and take control with the MyCard app and debit card from Farmer State Bank. Our app lets you control your debit card and securely turn it off right from your phone. Safe, secure, instant. MyCard is available only at Farmer State Bank. Ask about it at any of our 9 locations or learn more at farmersebank.com. Farmer State Bank, member FDIC.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, good evening. Friday night getting underway. 102.9 ESPN Missoula statewide, SWX Montana. A pair of players have left the Montana football team with the Grizz season opener fast approaching. Redshirt freshman offensive lineman Cole Sane and junior quarterback Rayshawn Rowland have officially been removed from the UM roster. Last season, Sane appeared in 2 games while still maintaining his redshirt. The St. John Bosco prep product is originally from the Bitterroot Valley. Rowland was a junior college transfer who started his career at Division II Dixie State before attending East LA College and the College of the Canyons. He joined the Grizz as a preferred walk-on. Montana has hired Clint May to coach its cross-country program, the school announced on Thursday. Between 2006 and 2015, May helped lead the Bozeman High cross-country and distance running programs to unprecedented success. In 10 seasons, the boys and girls teams each claimed 9 Class AA state championships. The girls placed as high as 4th at the Nike Northwest Regional Championships. May has spent the last 3 seasons as the track and field coach at Southern Virginia, an NCAA Division III program. And finally, the Missoula Osprey had a breakthrough, beating the Ogden Raptors 7-1 on Thursday night to snap a 5-game losing streak. The win is Missoula's first over the dominant Raptors of the Pioneer League South, snapping a 7-game losing streak to Ogden in the process. The O's return home for the first of 6 straight home games tonight against Great Falls.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6. You know it's kind of hard just to get along today. Our subject isn't cool, but he fakes it anyway. He may not have a clue and he may not have style, but everything he
Hopefully Austin Tutel's listening to this show because his brother is on the coast doing fantasy football draft. But I know Austin is back from fishing, and this song reminds me of him. He used to love the Offspring. When that album dropped, Austin Tutel brought that thing.
How old could he have been when this album dropped?
Well, when you have a brother like Ryan who's 9 years older than you have a pretty elevated level of music taste.
All right.
This was in 5th grade. So
Okay. That's fair. All right.
5th or 6th grade. I remember when this thing dropped, though. It was definitely a hot track at the old Hellgate Middle School. Nugent and Nuanez marches on. Ryan Tutel, he's out for the day. He'll be back. I don't know how much vacation he's got, but he's got to be running out here soon. He's been in the Philippines for 2 weeks. He's been all over the great state of Montana. He's been out to Wisconsin, and I'll never stop giving him hell for it. Skipping his pride and joy here. But Mike Nugent in studio with me, Colter Nuanez, as always, broadcasting to you live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris, 2904 West Broadway in Missoula. Missed anything in the first hour of the show? Go check it out on the podcast. You can find the podcast on the TuneIn Radio app or on iTunes. You can find it on Spotify, or you can just go to the station website, 1029ESPN.com. Podcast proudly presented by the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. Mike picked, and I just supported the conversation, picking the Grizz and Bobcat football schedules game for game. And if it all plays out like that, it's going to be a fun November and a fun football season overall for everybody across the state of Montana. Shout out to all you guys out there on SWX Montana watching us around the state. If you want to give us a call, if you got anything you want to say, you want to debate, you got a question for me, you got a question for Mike, give us a call, 329-1899. All guests join us via the Rangich Brothers RV phone lines. Now we're going to talk a little bit more college football. Of course we are. We're talking about the Montana State quarterback situation, something that's been talked about exhaustively over the last several years, but I think it's definitely an interesting time to analyze the spot right now in Bozeman, because the first domino, Dakota Prukop, graduate transferring to the University of Oregon when Jeff Choate first took the job. That led to then Montana State rolling the dice and trying to bring in Tyler Brugman, an FBS drop-down who spent some time at Washington State, Louisville, Scottsdale Community College before finally landed at Montana State. Halfway through that first season under Choate, he gets the hook. They go with Chris Murray, but it seemed like even though Murray started 16 straight games, he was always a stopgap. They didn't really necessarily truly invest in him as the quarterback of the present or the future. He was just the guy who they rolled with, but they were always trying to supplant him. They were always trying to replace him. They gave Tucker Rovig the chance to beat him out one spring and then another spring, and it never happened. But then Murray basically disqualifies himself from the situation because of his academic struggles, and now he's no longer with the program. This last spring, or I guess last season, they pit Tucker Rovig against Troy Anderson. Troy Anderson ends up winning the job. They try to get Rovig going by the midpoint of October. Jeff Choate said they were going to roll with him coming out of the bye, and then Rovig gets his foot stepped on and breaks it, and so then it was this Troy Anderson show all the way down the stretch, and they really had to do some unique things on offense to keep the ship afloat. But then coming out of last season, a playoff season for Montana State, I think everybody in the program knew the best thing for the program and the best thing for the individual was to move Troy Anderson to defense full-time, play him an outside linebacker, which then set the table for Tucker Rovig to again compete for the quarterback job against, this time, Casey Bauman. And Bauman is a guy that has some of the great physical gifts I've seen in a quarterback, but also a guy that comes from an absolutely tiny town in northwestern Washington who has really he had no polish coming into Montana State. A really raw guy that has really been trying to develop. But he ends up winning the job. They name him as the starting quarterback on Monday. And tomorrow in Bozeman, 6 p.m., the Bobcats will scrimmage at Bobcat Stadium. A live scrimmage. Jeff Choate said today it'll be about 25 to 30 plays for the number one guys, and then about 45 to 50 plays for some of the younger guys. So that'll be an interesting format. But this will be basically Casey Bauman's debut, his first time as the named starter in a live action. What's your overall take of this Bobcat quarterback situation?
You know, it's interesting because I think you could take two things away from it. He didn't really win the camp battle. I mean, camp's not even halfway done. So it's like, I think if this is how Choate feels, he must have felt that way at the end of spring, but wanted to see how he did in the summer program, how his leadership came along. and how the guys reacted to him coming back for a week or two at camp. Because to name him that early in camp tells me that he's head and shoulders above Rovig, right? You would think that.
It's definitely an interesting timing. When Choate said day one of fall camp that he wanted to name a starter coming out of the first scrimmage, which was 8 days into camp, I thought.
But that's interesting.
I said, I wonder if they're actually going to be able to do it, and then they were. They actually did it.
But that's the thing that makes me wonder with Choate, and I like Choate as a coach, but I don't think his track record on quarterbacks, evaluating him, recruiting him, doing anything is all that impressive. And I kind of wonder if he didn't have this system and he just said, we're going to pick a guy by now and go with them. And it's like, did they pick Bauman because he has more upside? I mean, he certainly looks the part. How tall is he? 6'7"?
He's 6'7", 235 pounds. He looks unlike many quarterbacks I've seen at any level, let alone this level.
I mean, those are specs, we'll call them, that any football coach dreams of in a QB.
No doubt. And on that note, I got two short bits that I want to play you. Here's Jeff Choate first, his evaluation of Casey Bauman's talent, and then Matt Miller, the offensive coordinator, what he thinks of Casey Bauman, just physically, the gifts that Casey Bauman has been given. Jeff Choate on Casey Bauman.
The one comparison I've heard used a couple times is Joe Flacco, who has also finished his career at the FCS level, and a big guy. But I actually think Casey moves better than you think. And so, you don't see a lot of 6'6" plus guys playing quarterback, but I think he's got a unique skill set. He's a very good athlete. Mom was a collegiate Division I rower. Dad was a good athlete, and he's he was a 3-sport athlete in high school. There's a pretty cool viral video of him, shattering a backboard on a dunk, and I just think he's got a unique skill set. I think that we can do some of the +1 run game, and he's going to hold up at 235 pounds. He runs better than you think. He's certainly got the arm talent of an elite quarterback.
Can you expound on that arm talent? You see the strength of his arm.
You guys probably see it too. I mean, it doesn't take somebody that's necessarily been around football their whole life to see a guy with zip on the ball. And I just have not seen a lot of guys at really anywhere that can throw the ball with the velocity that he does. Now, at times, he's got to become more accurate, and that's going to be the thing that you really hang your hat on. But he can make some throws that we haven't been able to make.
And next, we'll hear from Matt Miller. Matt Miller, class of 2009 out of Helena Capital, before going and setting a bunch of records at Boise State. But that class of 2009 in Montana, a really underrated class, because you talk about Matt Miller, who is one of the most decorated athletes to ever come out of Montana, and he is still the all-time leader in Boise State history in catches, even though he missed a ton of time during his senior year. But then he also had Brock Osweiler in that class, a future second-round draft pick who played at Arizona State, and then rose to prominence with the Denver Broncos, and then rose to infamy by signing a gigantic contract with the Houston Texans and not lasting hardly any time at all. But you can't really bemoan Osweiler's talent, because he's definitely a mercurial guy and a polarizing guy, but he's pretty darn good when he was good. He's just fallen from grace since then, but his physical skills, hard to deny. But that 2009 class also, Josh Eustace, future first-round draft pick. So those three guys alone make that one of the great classes in Montana history. But here is Matt Miller's take on Casey Bauman.
I think good things are going to come for him.
You've been around football for so long. Can you talk to Casey's physical skills and maybe think of something in football where you've seen someone like him? Is there anyone you can compare him to?
There's a lot of comparisons. This is body stature, being a Montana guy. He reminds me of the stature of Brock Osweiler. Brock had a strong arm, very football savvy, kind of had the same moxie as Casey. And I knew Brock because we're about the same age, and so just knowing his personality and Casey's personality is very similar. But Casey's still got a long ways to go in his development. I'm not saying he's a Brock Osweiler type of talent yet, but I think he has all the potential in the world. If he keeps working like he's working, that good things will come his way.
Mike Nugent, your reaction to the Joe Flacco and Brock Osweiler comparisons from the Bobcat coaching staff?
Well, it's interesting because, neither one of those are amazing. So if we're using NFL quarterbacks, they're not putting too high of expectations on them, but they're not putting too low of expectations on them. You know what I mean?
Oh, right. But also I think you need to look at it through the lens of, Brock Osweiler signed a $72 million contract with the Houston Texans, and then he flopped, and now he's basically out the league. He's a free agent.
We should talk about that. That's
And Joe Flacco, is definitely on the downside of his career. But these two guys are starting quarterbacks in the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
If Casey
100%.
Bauman ever gets to even.
And Flacco got hot and had one of the most impressive playoff runs anybody's ever had.
That made himself a
it's
ton of money. All I'm saying is if he could even fulfill a quarter of the potential of those guys, I mean, if Casey Bauman is NFL prospect in a couple of years, then I think you could say that it's a massive success for their development of him. It'll be interesting to see.
I think that what's probably what this is probably all about is that Casey Bauman is probably the best QB on MSU's roster.
Yes.
And they probably both recognized it, and they're like, look, he has the highest ceiling, and he's probably the best right now. Let's roll with him, even if we have a little bit of a learning curve, because if he catches fire, then we got a guy for 4 years. It's going to be interesting to watch.
Choate made such an interesting comment, too, at the tail end of his press conference. He said, I stayed out of this whole thing. He said, I was doing all sorts of other stuff trying to stay out of this whole thing, which to me I think is a huge step of growth for Jeff Choate in terms of empowering his offensive coordinator. Because make no mistake.
If he really did.
If he really did, no doubt. But make no mistake, Montana State has had some quarterbacks with deficiencies the last couple of years. But I think that the undertold part of this deal is that, first of all, Chris Murray was never supposed to be in the mix to play until right now. He was supposed to be a redshirt sophomore competing for the job right now, not some true freshman that was thrown to the wolves. And they kind of got drunk on his running ability without developing him as a quarterback. I mean, he made his first start in college football when he was 17 years old. He turned 18 the next week. I mean, he was so far behind physically.
Yep.
When you recruit a guy like him who's such a great athlete, you got to put the time in and let him develop. And having him develop in the line of fire while you're trying to snap a 6-game Big Sky Conference losing streak to start your tenure, that's a ton of pressure to put on the kid. And then you talk about Courtney Messingham, the offensive coordinator, leaves after year one. You try the Daenerys McGee experiment as the quarterbacks coach. That doesn't work out. So then you bring in a third quarterbacks coach. I don't know how a kid like Chris Murray is supposed to have success when he has multiple quarterback coaches, multiple offensive coordinators. And it's the same thing all the way down the line. But now it seems as if Jeff Choate has taken a step back, and I don't think he necessarily had the ultimate trust in Brian Armstrong or Bob Cole as his offensive play caller. It seems as if he does have that trust in Matt Miller, and
it's so interesting.
It is, because Matt Miller's 28 years old, right?
Don't get me wrong. I think Matt Miller's got a high ceiling.
Oh, absolutely.
But Bob Cole had orchestrated some pretty good college offenses.
Oh, man. I mean, Bob Cole was Drew Miller's main man here at the University of Montana 20 years ago, and then he went on to coach multiple other really good guys, including a Heisman finalist.
If you couldn't take the shackles off that guy when you had him, I think that says more about you than him. That being said, I hope that he does give Matt Miller the room to grow, because I think you and I have talked about this, but I think the biggest telling thing with the Cats now that they've named him the starter is how long of a leash they're going to give him.
Right.
And in my opinion, it better be long.
Well, my brother asked a great question in that press conference. He said, do you feel that Tucker Rovig can still compete in this thing? In other words, is this a competition that you name Bauman the starter for Texas Tech, but can Rovig overtake him during the rest of the non-conference and even into the first week of conference play? And Choate said, hey, the thing that we discussed as a staff that I think that everybody emphasized to me was that Casey Bauman cannot just be looking over his shoulder, wondering if Tucker Rovig's coming. You have to, if you're going to start a redshirt freshman, you have to just live with some of the mistakes he's going to make.
Yeah, I almost think you need to let him take every single snap in that Texas Tech game, even if it is a blowout. Because every single snap against the live defense matters so much to him as a freshman. So I think that's what's going to be really telling to Choate on if he's taking a step forward and trusting the offensive guys to do the offense on his teams.
No doubt.
Is if he lets them do this.
No doubt. I mean, I think Montana State has one of the 3 best offensive lines in the league. I think if they can find a functional quarterback, they have several of the most explosive playmakers on the outside in the league. I think they have one of the 3 best running backs in the league in Isaiah Fonse. And if Troy Anderson's playing running back, they have another one of probably the 4 best running backs in the league in Troy Anderson. They have elite talent at all 3 levels of their defense. I think they have at least 3 elite defensive linemen. I think they have at least 1 elite linebacker in Troy Anderson. And I think they have the best safety pair in the league in Braden Conkle and Jacque Allen. All that said, exactly what you just said to me is the absolute key for Montana State's season. I think that they have to figure out stability at quarterback. Yep. Because say Casey Bauman goes out in Lubbock, Texas, and it's a disaster. Say he throws 3 picks in the first 3 quarters. As soon as that hook comes out, if they decide to do that, I think that is the first step towards really standing on the edge of a slippery slope.
Yep, 100%. They should give him every snap in all preseasons, unless they get way ahead in one. And I mean, it's like Rovig is they know who he is. I mean, if they're going to commit to this guy, they got to commit to him.
Let's hear a little bit from Casey Bauman, because we have not actually shared any interviews with Bauman at all on the show. At Montana State, it's a very similar policy as at Montana. True freshman, not allowed to talk to the media. So last time I interviewed Casey Bauman was when he had committed to Montana State in August of 2017. He held a press conference on August 9th. So this is actually the day before the scrimmage in which Bauman won the job. So I cut out all the stuff that has to do with the upcoming deal. But a couple general questions just about Bauman. And to fill in the blanks here, Casey Bauman, if you wonder, if Jeff Choate, who's been at Boise State and Washington and Florida and a variety, Utah State, a variety of FBS programs, and Matt Miller, who played at Boise State, both are talking about this guy having one of the best arms they've ever seen. And then you factor in that he's 6'6.5", 6'7", and he's an athletic build he's a sturdy guy and he can run a little bit. You start thinking, how did this guy actually end up at Montana State? And I was reading my recruiting story. So Casey Bauman's from Everson, Washington, which is in the northwest corner of Washington. And he's from a town of a population of 2,000 people. Nooksack Valley High School, it has multiple towns that feeds into it. It's still only a 600-kid high school. So you're talking about a big Class B high school or a small Class A high school in Montana. Mm-hmm. So it comes from a very small level. But I was rereading that recruiting story.
Jasper on the line has a question.
I thought it was pretty interesting. Bauman basically said, "Hey, I had a great junior year. I was I was the player of the year in my league and all this stuff, and I was not getting recruited by anybody." So he said, "Dad, you need to help me
go do something."
And so they went on a camp tour the summer before his senior year. They went to camps at Boise State, Wyoming, Montana, Montana State, and Idaho. And by the time Idaho was the first one to offer him, and then he got to Montana State, they offered him, and then the Grizzlies gave him a little bit of interest, but never actually pulled the trigger. But he had to basically get himself recruited.
So Stitt didn't offer him, and then when Houck came in, he didn't offer him either.
Right.
And Eastern didn't offer him.
Eastern did not offer him.
That's the one that's weird to me. And It's like he might carry a chip on his shoulder and be like, how you guys didn't offer me? That one's interesting to me.
Totally. Before we play this Casey Bauman sound, though, we're going to go to the Rankish Brothers RV phone line. Welcome in Jasper to the show. Jasper, what do you got?
Hey, I liked what you guys were saying about how Choate would maybe choose to distribute snaps early in the season. And I was wondering if you thought if it was like now or never. Like Choate, he has to have the most credibility, like the most slack from his fan base to take risks because they beat the Grizz 3 years in a row. The Cat fans don't seem to have big standards on what like a successful winning season means. So if not now, then never, right?
I want to clarify that the caller said that, not me. The caller said that. I think that it's put up or shut up for Choate, in my opinion. I think it's if they don't rise to the expectations of what their schedule is, that their fans know what their schedule is this year, then when is it ever going to happen? You're going to start creeping in and saying, what's going on here? And I really think that he probably is carrying that a little bit because if they don't make the playoffs this year, that's an abysmal failure for year 4 of a program with this schedule. Wouldn't you agree?
And given the talent that they have. I mean, I'll be straight up honest with you. And I said this on our podcast, and then I got roasted on both Egriz and Bobcat Nation. And my brother agrees. We both said that Montana State has as much defensive talent as we've ever seen. They're not the best defense we've ever seen. They will not be until they prove it. And I don't know if they even have that upside. North Dakota State's defenses the last 7 years are the best defenses that you could possibly see in the FCS. The defenses at Montana during the 2000s, unbelievable. But I'm talking about actual physical talent. I mean, a guy like Jacquay Allen, I mean, he started at Virginia Tech. That's not like, some mid-level FBS school. That is DB University. This guy this guy is the best ball hawk in the league. Braden Conkle is an NFL guy at safety. Bryce Dirk is the biggest physical specimen I've seen on the edge probably since Tyrone Holmes in the Big Sky Conference. And then you add in all their other guys. I mean, and then you have Troy Anderson, who's playing on the edge as well now defensively. That said, they still have to figure out a way to produce. And I think that talent has to actually develop and then play together to be able to actually affirm what is the best. I guess what I could say is this, is that Jacque Allen and Braden Conkle are both more naturally physically gifted than a guy like Robbie Grimsley at North Dakota State. But Robbie Grimsley started 62 straight games and went to 4 national championship games and won 3. Mm-hmm. There's no taking away the accomplishments of his career. A guy like Bryce Sterk, he has more natural talent than a guy like Greg Menard, who was a D-end for North Dakota State. But Greg Menard was the latest in a long line of really successful pass-rushing, hard-nosed D-ends at North Dakota State. So a lot of times, say the talent does not necessarily equal the result. So the Bobcats still have to prove it, but just looking at them on paper,
they should.
They're dang good.
I mean, they should. Like, if it looks like he's succeeded in building him to this point, but they got to prove it, because the Oshaws were the underdog only works for so long.
Casey Bauman, his Tutel Nuanez debuted. A couple quick sound bites here from the new Bobcat starting quarterback.
I mean, I feel like it's been going pretty well. I mean, I feel like since the spring, we've just, as a team, completely progressed. Not just me or anybody else, but together. Like, that summer's a huge time for us. Everyone's there in the summer. We still have our player-ran practices, so I think it's going well. Offenses come together. I mean, every day we're going against one of the best defenses, the Big Sky, right? So that's awesome. I mean, it's a blessing and a curse at the same time, but it's great. So I think it's come together pretty well.
Yeah, does that kind of lead to some frustration sometimes when that makes things tough on you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good thing. Ultimately, it's a really good thing, because I mean, you practice against these guys every day, and then so once you get to a game, I mean, you're probably not going to see anybody much better, which is, you can't really ask for much more than that. I mean, those guys are pretty good, and we know that, and they know that. So you can't really be frustrated at the end of the day, because they're on our team.
How would you say your command is right now? Command of the huddle, command of the offense, your confidence, maybe just compared to where you were last year at this time and going into the season? Yeah,
I think it's improved a lot more, because just learning. Last year, I think it was great for me to redshirt. Learning, listening to Troy, listening to all the coaches, just being on the sideline during those games, calling the signals, and just understanding like how the game works. Because I came from place a little bit smaller than this, and so yeah. I think it's improved, and like I said, throughout the summer, I mean, it's just you and the guys, right? So you're just bonding, getting to know each other, creating relationships and all that. So I think it's going well.
Knowing that you'd be kind of dealing in this situation, quarterback battle, what did your offseason look like, and how did you kind of prepare to set yourself up for fall camp?
I mean, yeah, I just wanted you want to give yourself the best chance you can to succeed, right? So throughout the summer, I mean, we're throwing every day. We're doing all this, trying to get our timing right, all the receivers and the quarterbacks. So, and just lifting, like I wanted to put a couple pounds on, and I was able to do that through the summer. I mean, Coach Wilcox is awesome in that regard. So I think, yeah, you want to give yourself the best chance to succeed, and I think for the most part, I did what I could. So.
What do you think is the biggest difference between this time last year and now? Do you just feel more comfortable, I suppose, more, knowing the offense more, I suppose?
Yeah, like I said, last year, everything was super fast. I came from a place a little smaller than this, like I mentioned. And, so I think just learning throughout the year, listening, I was just kind of just tried to listen to everything I could, just soak up anything I could, listen to Troy. I mean, Troy, he's a freak, we all know that, and he's super smart, so I just tried to pick up on anything they had and just learn the offense. And I think, the game's kind of slowed down for me a little bit. Obviously, I know all of our stuff and all of our schemes, and I think, I've made improvements since last year.
Is it hard to earn the trust of your teammates? What goes into that?
Well, a lot of the stuff, like, this summer was a big step for us because it's optional. So it's just being there every day. It's not necessarily earning the trust. It's just doing everything you can for them, knowing that you'll have their back and they're going to have yours. I mean, I think we have a good relationship, like the whole team has that relationship. I think this is a pretty special team, and I think we all trust each other. So.
So there you go, Casey Bauman. A little interview from a day before the scrimmage that he won the starting job, and he will make his Bobcat debut as the official starter in their scrimmage tomorrow night. We are up against it, but Mike Nugent in studio with me, Colter Nuanez, on Tutel Nuanez, right here, 102.9 ESPN Missoula, as well as statewide SWX Television. We still have our a sports update from a chick who doesn't know about sports, as well as Mike's top 5 Grizz newcomers to watch.
Nuanez and Nugent.
Nuanez and Nugent. Back after this.
Most of my family, they never graduated high school, so I'm trying to break that barrier. My daughter, Brooklyn, was also a motivation for me to go back to school. Every day after work, went straight to school, and it paid off.
At age 26, Kareem finished his high school diploma.
I could not have done it alone. I see the future is really bright for me.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Alpine Touch has mastered keeping your taste buds happy by spicing up anything you throw on the grill this summer. Now, let Alpine Touch keep your mouth watering whenever you want their new sunflower shooters. Their new jumbo sunflower seeds seasoned with Alpine Touch's world-famous all-purpose seasonings, and Alpine Touch sunflower shooters will be available all summer at every Osprey baseball home game. Available at retail locations around the state and online at alpinetouch.com. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River. In western Montana, we know shopping local matters, and you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, who pump it up, pump it up.
Stop into Town Pump this summer for all your cold beverages. Enjoy your cold one at the lake or on the porch. Pick up Miller & Coors 12-pack cans, 2 for $20. Enjoy summer for longer with Mix and Match 5-hour energy shots, 2 for $5 at your Town Pump.
Town Pump, right down the road, pump it up, oh yeah.
It's a crisp fall morning. Time for your daily pumpkin soy latte. As you wait for your coffee, you get a buzz. No, it's not your boss wanting extra whipped cream, but your ADT video doorbell. It's a package. Your new latte machine. No more $5 PSLs. Barista service. Brought to you by ADT. Designing and installing a smart home just for you. Backed by best-in-class 24/7 protection. Learn more at ADT.com. ADT. Real protection. License information available at ADT.com.
We've gone silent, but don't worry. We're still here. I think I hit the wrong button. That's okay, though. Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Missoula, statewide, SWX Montana, and around the planet Earth on YouTube television. It's actually Nuanez and Nugent today. Mike Nugent sitting in for Ryan Tutel. He's on vacation. He might be all the way to Seattle by now. He's out doing his fantasy football draft with all his good buddies. Mike has his top 5 newcomers from the Grizz to share with you. But before that, we got to give our weekly sports update from a chick who doesn't know about sports with our good friend Carolyn. Enjoy.
Hey, hello, how are you? Welcome into your favorite segment of the week. We do these with the 3 of us half the time and just 2 of us the other half the time. But I'm here with Carolyn. This is our weekly sports update from a chick who doesn't know about sports. It's presented by the Missoula Winery and Events Center. And remember, they got new hours out of the Missoula Winery and Events Center from 2 till 5:30 p.m. Wednesday through Friday and noon to 5 on Saturday. Go have some $2 Tattoo Girl wine. It's really good wine. It's only $2. Why wouldn't you? It's just out there by the airport, right across the street from Big Sky Brewing. So go check them out. Missoula Winery and Events Center. Carolyn, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Great. You got all sorts of stuff. This is the longest list you've had in a while.
I know. I have some notes.
sports.
Okay, let's go. What do you got?
Well, UFC fighter Conor McGregor hit an old man in a bar.
Okay.
Now,
is this surprising?
It's rude to hit an old man in the
Sure.
bar at all. But if you're a UFC fighter, I think that's like extra rude because you're a fighter. You don't just hit people.
Right.
So apparently he was in an Irish pub where apparently fights break out all the time anyway. So it's not that big of a deal. But I guess he was tasting his own whiskey and some old man made a comment and he just smacked him in the head.
Well, I mean, I think that Conor McGregor has basically gotten in a fight every place that he's ever been. I mean, he's gotten in fights on buses. He's gotten in fights after his actual sanctioned fights are over. And he obviously has a temper problem.
Right. Don't you think he should just take it out in the ring? Why would you hit an old man?
Well, he obviously has severe aggression problems because he's been a professional boxer / UFC fighter for 10 years at least. And he gets in fights all the time outside of that, too. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, does he ever get in trouble?
He seems to always get in trouble and then somehow always get out of it. It's strange how that works when you have millions of dollars. Yes.
Well, I hope the old man's okay.
I do too. What else do you have?
Dale Earnhardt Jr. was in a plane crash yesterday.
And this was not just like we had to ground the plane. Like
No.
this thing like ran into something, right?
It ran. I don't know what it ran into, but it was covered with a chain link fence. And I saw the plane, the aftermath, and it was not pretty. I'm just so glad he and his family are okay. They said if that fence had been over like 3 feet, it would have blocked the door and they might have been trapped, which is like just such a scary thought. But everyone's okay and safe. And I just remember when his dad died in that horrible car, race. And
Right.
I just thought, oh God, is this a repeat? But we're good. He's happy and healthy. Few scratches. I don't think I could ever get in a plane again though, if that happened.
Is NASCAR a sport?
No.
There's a lot of people that argue with that. I hope NASCAR Terry is listening right now. He's gonna call right now. I know he is.
I could do it.
You
easily.
could do it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
230
Have you ever
miles per
seen
hour.
me on North Reserve?
Oh man, 230 around the turns.
Heck yes.
Oh wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I could do it.
I'm still up in the air if it's a sport or not. It definitely takes a tremendous amount of skill and fortitude, but the athleticism, I don't know. It takes great
Hand-eye coordination.
courage, eyesight. Yeah, great hand-eye coordination. Yeah.
I mean, could he run a marathon? Probably not.
No. True.
But people love it, so who am I to say? I just don't think it's an athletic sport.
Biggest spectator sport in the world.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's totally crazy. What else you got?
Jay-Z is partnered with the NFL. He's going to be their music coordinator. I don't know the title. People are up in arms about it, but I think it's actually great. I think it's going to really help with the NFL's conversation. People have been really criticizing the NFL about their social justice efforts, and I think having Jay-Z on board, they're going to have a new voice, and hopefully, I don't know, I think it'll be really positive.
So such a slippery slope because the NFL, the NFL and their lack of acknowledgement of social justice and their blackballing of Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reed and others, definitely controversial. This seems like an olive branch to maybe write it, but I don't really know. It seems as if they are reaching for straws here because they know Jay-Z is more famous than anybody.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know what Jay-Z is going to do, but I think it's their hope is to help bridge whatever gap there is with everything they've done. I mean, it would be great to see Colin Kaepernick. Can I say his name right?
Yes, you almost
right?
got it. Kaepernick, yeah.
And Eric Reed, they should be playing football.
Eric Reed's going to be back. He'll be playing this year. Kaepernick, probably not. I don't know.
Well, I mean, he got that Nike deal, so he can just sit back and chill.
Well, we could go all the way to the bottom of the rabbit hole on this one, but we will not.
No, definitely. I just want you to have the scoop. That's all.
Man,
that's all I care
I
about.
wonder what sort of music advisory Jay-Z will put forth. Are you a Jay-Z fan? Do you love Jay-Z?
I hate Jay-Z and
Really?
Beyonce.
Really?
Actually, I like Jay-Z. I don't like Beyonce.
Okay, so
I don't
tell
know
me
why.
more.
I don't know. Beyonce is just too big for her britches.
See, everybody tells me I'm wrong for hating the Beatles, but now we finally meet somebody that hates Beyonce.
I know.
It's the same vein.
I loved Destiny's Child.
Me too.
But I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of Beyonce. I like Jay-Z's music, though. So here's what I think will be great is that he'll get good music for the halftime show. Maybe like not have Bruno Mars every year.
Was the last halftime show with Maroon 5 at the Super Bowl good?
It was fine.
I thought it was
Yeah.
great.
I mean, I don't know why everyone was so mean about Maroon 5. I mean, yeah, he has a lot of tattoos. Get over it. I mean, I don't know why everyone was so rude. You should have seen my Facebook. It was blowing up.
I know. Everybody's was. I didn't get why everybody was freaking out, though. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I actually like Maroon 5. So
I 50-50 like Maroon 5, yeah.
Yeah, I don't love Adam Levine like every other chick. I don't see what the big deal is.
Really?
Yeah. I think when people's egos get too big, it like just makes me gets me over it. So this is why I love the Beatles. They were just super chill.
Oh my gosh. Says the woman that wasn't even alive when this phenomenon was happening. I don't know. Were the Beatles chill when it was actually Beatlemania?
I mean, you've obviously not seen Hard Day's Night or Help. Two of the best movies ever made.
Oh my gosh. Is that when they were singing their Sesame Street songs?
How dare you?
Sorry.
Oh my
I just
God.
can't help myself with the Beatles.
They're just the cutest little buttons you've ever seen with their shaggy hair and their suits and their shiny shoes.
Back to Beyonce. When
Okay.
she was young, well, she's still young, but when she was in Destiny's Child and
Yeah.
the first solo, she was so sweet.
Mm-hmm.
And her vocal prowess was on such a great display when she was singing like soft ballads, and then she just went ferocious, fierce mode,
Yeah.
which is great, I guess, for the woman empowerment. But like, the music's just not that good. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't love. Yeah, I just don't. I want to like her because everybody seems to, but
Right.
no. But I.
Well, if Liz
yeah.
heard this segment, she's going to punch us both. Cause,
Oh, I've had my friend Paige and I have like hardcore arguments about it.
yeah. Our office manager Liz is she is all in
Yeah.
on Beyonce.
And more power to her. I'm not going to tell her not to be. I personally am not a fan.
What else you got?
Well, this one's big.
Can't wait.
The USA Today named the 1985 Bears,
Oh
the
my
Super
gosh.
Bowl winning 1985 Bears, the best football team of all time.
And Carolyn's from Chicago, so of course she loves this.
Yeah.
Who was your favorite player on that team?
The Refrigerator Perry.
Oh yeah,
I mean, how could you not love him?
love it.
And Walter Payton, of course.
Sweetness.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong. I did not like Jim McMahon. Again with the ego.
Hey.
It was his sunglasses and his mullet. I couldn't get on board.
What about Mongo? Did you like Steve McMichael?
I don't know
he was
who that
another one
is.
of the iconic guys on that
Was
team.
he in the Super Bowl shuffle?
He was?
Then yes, I liked him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that team is so interesting to me because they just had such a moment in time. I mean, I feel as if a lot of people think they're the greatest team of all time, but their run was so short.
Right.
Just 1 year.
Right, 1 year.
And most NFL runs are 2 to 3. The window in the NFL is usually 3 years, and that's it's crazy that they only won one.
It was the best year of my life.
Was it?
No, I was in fifth grade. It was not a great year, but it was a really fun football year. And then they had the Super Bowl shuffle, and then my fifth grade class did the fifth grade shuffle at the Field Park Fun Fair.
Wow.
And we put it on, and we had our boom boxes and dry ice and sunglasses, and we all rapped.
Oh, the 80s.
It was amazing.
What's the greatest decade? What was better, the 80s or the 90s?
I'm gonna go with 80s.
Because the 2000s is not in the mix.
No, the 80s were great. The 90s were good. I mean, I was in college and, good things happened. But the 80s were like the pinnacle of my childhood. And
the pinnacle of happiness in America.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan. I mean.
Yeah, we've been grasping for straws ever since. Bring back Madonna.
Madonna, Howard Jones. I mean, the one-hit wonders of the 80s. I could go on and on about that. That was glorious.
Our funniest promo meeting we've had in the last 3 months was when we were arguing over which songs to play for Name That Tune to give away B-52 tickets, and then all of a sudden we were getting suggestions like Adam Ant and other
Like Goody
one-hit-
Two-Shoes?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great one. My 40th birthday was an 80s party.
Oh, man.
And it was glorious.
The concept of nostalgia amongst humanity.
Yep, love it.
Is it time to drink wine yet?
Yeah.
Well, if you are available to go drink some wine, you should. Missoula Winery and Event Center out by the airport right across the street from Big Sky Brewing. $2 glasses of Tattoo Girl wine. It is highly rated. They have 3 different wines, 89 or above from Wine Enthusiast. And it's only $2 a glass, so go check it out. New tasting room hours out at the Missoula Winery and Event Center now, Wednesday through Friday. They're open from 2 until 5:30 p.m. And from Saturday, noon to 5. Good stuff out there. You should go check it out. Carolyn, a sports
Bolter.
update from a chick who doesn't know about sports.
It's been great.
Classic as always. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
I know you loved it. Go check out Missoula Winery and Event Center. New hours, 2 to 5:30 Wednesday through Friday, as well as noon to 5 on Saturdays. Can't beat $2 glasses of wine anywhere. Mike Nugent, he's got his top 5 Grizz newcomers to watch. Nuanez and Nugent marches on.
The Big Sky Breakdown at SkylineSportsMT.com continues to give you the inside look from around the Big Sky Conference and the state of Montana. The most in-depth podcast in the Treasure State gives you multiple episodes each week year-round with commentary, analysis, interviews, and entertainment from around one of the most storied conferences in the West.
Whether it's full uncut interviews with Montana State head football coach Jeff Choate or Travis Secure's thoughts on his outstanding Montana men's basketball team, everything you need to hear is available on the Big Sky Breakdown. Take a look inside the best stories in the conference and the most detailed analysis in the state. The Big Sky Breakdown, it has you covered.
Whether it's X's and O's acumen of Brooks Nuanez or the comedic banter of Ryan Tutel or the dry humor of Andrew Houghton.
And don't forget the best connections to everybody that matters in the sports world across the Big Sky Conference from Colter Nuanez. And by the way, thank you for calling me funny.
You're welcome. The Big Sky Breakdown will present you with all of it and more at SkylineSportsMT.com.
The Big Sky Breakdown, proudly presented by Town Pump Food Stores and Selway Armory.
Garden City Paint and Glass in Missoula is like your paint doctor. They take the pain out of painting. Don't trust your home to anything less than professional PPG paints from Garden City Paint and Glass. Go to visualizecolors.com. Scan in your room photo to see what color combinations will look best before painting. That's visualizecolors.com, featuring professional PPG paints. Garden City Paint and Glass in Missoula, across from the Southside McDonald's at 3217 Brooks.
Les Schwab is proud to introduce 2 of our best tires ever, just in time for summer. There's our exclusive Reputation, a high-mileage premium passenger tire we believe has the quietest, most comfortable ride ever. Or our exceptionally quiet and smooth all-season traction tire, the Open Range AT. Get up to $150 instant rebate on 4 backcountry MT or AT tires or $50 on 4 road control passenger tires. Les Schwab Tires. Doing the right thing matters. Cannot be combined with other offers. Limited time. Terms and conditions apply. Details at leschwab.com.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Have you been hurt or disabled? Are you missing time from work and not sure what to do? I'm attorney Chris Helmer, and Clark Fork Law Offices in Missoula is here to help. Our team specializes in worker compensation, personal injury, and Social Security disability. We fight for the benefits you deserve. Call Clark Fork Law at 728-0168 for a free consultation or visit clarkforklaw.com. Again, 728-0168.
Tutel and Nuanez. Listen to the podcast on the TuneIn Radio app or on iTunes. 1029ESPN.com.
Use that evidence, race it around. There goes my hero. Watch him as he
Welcome back. Nuanez and Nugent marches on. Ryan Tutel, he is out on the coast somewhere. He's done no less than 60 mock drafts, so he better come back with the best fantasy football team of all time if he's going to take a vacation in the heart of football season. But we're happy to have Mike Nugent in the studio with me, Colter Nuanez, 129 ESPN Missoula statewide, SWX Montana, and around the planet Earth on YouTube television. If you missed anything from the first hour of the show or the second hour of the show, great show today. We talked a ton of college football. We're about to get into a little bit more to send you off into your weekend. But if you missed anything, check out the podcast. You can find it on the TuneIn Radio app or on Spotify or on iTunes, or you can find it on the station website, 1029ESPN.com. Podcast available thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. Before we get to Mike's top 5 newcomers for the Grizz football team, need you guys to give us a call right now. I got a 6-pack and a sandwich from Warden's Market. All you got to do is give us a call. Give Reese your name and your phone number. He'll give a call down to Warden's. You can go pick out yourself a 6-pack and a sandwich from Warden's Market. Those guys do it the best when it comes to sandwiches, and they do it the best when it comes to beer as well. So give us a call right now, 329-1899. We got a 6-pack for you and a sandwich courtesy of Warden's Market, Missoula's oldest grocery store. All right, Mike, got about 5 minutes. Give us your top 5 newcomers for the Grizz football team.
First of all, these giveaways have been great. I mean, I would take the Alpine Touch. I'd take the Warden's sandwich.
Yeah,
these are great giveaways.
We treat these people right around here. We want to make sure you're full of beer, full of sandwiches, full of steaks, whatever you need. We take care of you guys out there.
All right, sounds good. So I'm going to go from my top 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I combined some redshirt freshmen and some newcomers.
Okay.
I think this is a slash in either or because I don't think they're both going to play, but either Corbin Walker or Trevor Gradney, two freshman cornerbacks, one from Billings, one from Washington.
Yep.
I think one of those two guys is going to see time this year, burn their red shirt, and actually contribute in that cornerback group.
I think so, too. I watched them both at practice the last time I was down there for a full practice. Trevor Gradney is more athletic than you think. He had a great track meet during the state AA championships. He led his team to the short relay victory, and he also placed in a couple other races. And he's tough, too. But Corbin Walker is a great athlete.
He's a 3-star recruit.
He's a 3-star recruit. I mean, I thought he was the best, most talented guy that Montana got from out of state. So I like that one. I think that's good.
Yep. So one of those two guys, I think, not both of them. After that, Nash Fouch.
Yep.
I think we've got a lot of guys rotating through those safeties, but he's going to be one of them. I think that guy's going to be legit.
He looks the part. He is 6'3", and he's up to about 208. He looks like the long-rangey safety you hope to recruit. And the thing I like about him is that he plays with a mean streak. He cut a couple guys in half during spring ball. I was telling you this at lunch yesterday. I actually haven't seen anybody take down Gabe Sulser one-on-one in the open field yet, except for one time in the stadium last year during spring ball when Natch Fouch got him.
Hey.
So if you could tackle Sulser in open space, you could tackle anybody in open space.
Yeah, let's put that one on your resume. Cole Grossman. I think that as the season goes on and he finds his spot and kind of gets comfortable, I think that guy could be a freak.
Absolutely. He's a phenomenal athlete. He was recruited to play either wide receiver or maybe even tight end, and now he's playing the outside linebacker rush end spot. That's kind of the hybrid spot in Montana's front. And he's all of 6'4". He's probably 20 pounds behind where he needs to be to truly be an elite player at that spot, but he makes up for his lack of mass with how well he moves. He's a really fluid athlete. I was watching him at practice the other day. He's impressive when you watch just how fluid his movements are and how long he is.
You notice I didn't really touch on the transfers as much on this list. Milton Mamula.
Yep.
He's interesting to me. We were excited to get him. He's out of Penn. It's kind of got an interesting connection to the program. I'm excited to see how he goes. He had his shoulder thing last year. You could see in his photo on GoGrizz.com, he's clearly wearing a shoulder brace, right. So I'm not giving away anything. But hopefully he's healthy, and I'll be excited. So my number one guy, and this is a little bit interesting, I think Drew Turner is going to lead this team in carries and yards.
You like Drew Turner
I like
a lot.
Drew Turner. I think he's a Bobby Hauck type of guy. Now, there's a couple other young running backs that could also fit that bill, but I think that one of those guys, Drew Turner, Garrett Graves, somebody other than Eastwood or Knight is going to lead the team in rushing.
I think Drew Turner has a pretty interesting backstory in terms of the chip on his shoulder as well, because when he was weighing his decision coming out of Kalispell Glacier, he had an offer from the Cats, and at that time, Bob Stitt was the head coach at Montana, and a power back like Turner seemed like he fit much better at Montana State. Well, then Montana State gets commitments from Sherrod White and Justin Cawley, a couple two-star guys out of California, and they pulled Drew Turner's offer. So he commits to Montana. Well, neither one of those guys for the Cats panned out, and now Drew Turner, as a redshirt freshman, is in the mix here at Montana. So I think that he has some motivation, and I think that he's one of the guys that's going to benefit so much from this coaching change, because it seems like he's, like you said, he's a perfect Bobby Hauck guy.
That story a little bit like Cody Kirk.
Right.
It's kind of that whole in the backyard, but went to the Cats, and I think that motivation's there. I like him. I think he's tough to pull down. I think he's going to be good.
He's a hard worker. Watch him at practice. He's very diligent. He's a yes or no sir type of guy. He looks. Body language is such a huge deal in sports to me, and he's always staring the coaches right in the eyes, taking the coaching and nodding his head, and then getting back in line and doing it. And
Absolutely.
I think that'll carry you far in Bobby Hauck's program. Nuge, thanks for coming in, man. This was a really fun day. Ryan Tutel, fear not, or maybe fear. We'll be back next week.
Fear, Ryan.
And now Ryan has some fear with, we talk about Casey Bauman not wanting to look in the rear view. Ryan Tutel might be looking in the rear view here with Mike Nugent doing a killer job on the show. But as always, man, appreciate you for coming in, and everybody out there, appreciate y'all for listening. Next week, remember, we got all sorts of stuff going on, all the giveaways we always do, but next Thursday we'll be at Locals downtown Missoula for our latest live broadcast. Chance to win Grizz tickets at the University of Oregon. So stay tuned for that. For Mike Nugent, Colter Nuanez, enjoy your weekend, everybody.
All right.
Nice, dude.
Hi, boys and girls. Ryan
Yeah, it's always a good time.
Colter Nuanez.
From Tutel and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio, from your very favorite Tutel and Nuanez podcast, and now officially Gracious Mercy on television statewide.
That's right. We've been doing a radio show and a podcast since August of 2017. And now it's time for us to expand our reach into statewide television on SWX.
We're on SWX every weekday from 4 to 6 live on your televisions. It's available on channel 199 on Spectrum Cable or on 23.3 on your antenna television. And you can download the Watch SWX app and get us that way on your phones and devices as well.
And of course, we'll still be right here, 102.9 ESPN Radio from Missoula and the Bitterroot Valley. And as always, you can find the podcast, the live stream, and everything else you need, 1029ESPN.com.
Colter, do you think that we're spreading ourselves too thin? Are we going to saturate these people and they're just going to start hating us, the inevitable backlash of the great heights to which we have now attained?
No chance. Tutel Nuanez, Montana's only statewide sports talk show.
Hey everybody, here with my good friend Josh from the Advocates Injury Law Firm. Josh, if I've been in an accident, how much is it going to cost me to hire you?
Well, we take cases on a contingency fee. And what that means for you is that if you're hurt in an accident, we only get paid if you make a recovery. You'll never owe us anything out of pocket.
What about the call for a consultation?
That's not a problem. We don't charge anything for an initial consultation, so you have absolutely nothing to risk by calling us.
If you're injured in a car accident, call the Advocates, 640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at canyonrivergolfclub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
We ate a lot of steaks before we came up with the Montana Club's Private Reserve Cut Angus. It's as good a steak as you're going to get. Our Private Reserve Cut Angus is specially cut for us. And with our custom seasoning, it has a flavor that's absolutely incomparable. We're confident that it will satisfy the most discriminating steak customer for an unrivaled steak experience. Real Montana, real food. The Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Here at Florence Coffee Co., we are proud to serve the finest flavors under the big sky, like our smooth and delectable cold-brewed toddy coffee. Florence Coffee's fresh brewed toddy coffee is known for its low acidity and smooth flavor. Served over ice, add your favorite flavor or an iced coffee like no other. Try one today at any of our Flowco locations around western Montana and visit us at florencecoffeeco.com.
Florence Coffee Company.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula.